Hi everyone, welcome to the presentation on wraparound funding opportunities. My name is Caroline Brown and I'm one of the business management consultants for Essex, and I work in the south. And my colleague today, Susie Threadgold, is a community development lead and she works in the west of Essex. Thanks, Susie. So to give a little bit of background on the childcare reforms, in March 2023, the Chancellor announced a package of reforms to the childcare sector, and part of this was the wraparound programme funding to be given to all the local authorities. And the government's aim is by 2026, all parents and carers of primary age children who need it should be able to access term time childcare from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the main aim of this is so that parents can access employment. So what is wraparound childcare and what is it not? Just wanted to put together a little bit of information about what we truly think wraparound childcare should look like. So the government have set out that this is term time only, and it's for primary age children, all primary age children from reception up to year 6. It needs to be delivered from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. And we get quite a lot of questions about this. Do we need to offer that breakfast club? Can we access the funding just for the afternoon club? And no, the answer is no. We need the childcare to be from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And we'll have a look at models later. It might not all be delivered on the same site by the same people, but it must be from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. The provision must be financially sustainable, not free. It needs to be paid for by the parents of those children who are attending. What it's not an enrichment activity such as a sport or art club 1 or 2 hours after school. Such clubs can coexist with wraparound childcare, but it can't be standalone, football club or art club or singing choir for an hour. It must be wraparound care. Parents should not be required to pick the children up from one site and take them to somewhere else. It must be a continuous from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. offer. Like I said before, it's not subsidised. It's not subsidised by the Department of Education or the local authority. This funding is simply to set up the provision, and for the initial costs, it's not long term, it will not be subsidised. Thanks, Susie. And over to you.
Okay, so links with the primary school. So schools are the integral part of the delivery of this because that is where the children are. They are at school or going to school. So they are sort of the starting point. The wraparound provision needs to be set up around the school day. So if the school starts its day at 8:45, the wraparound provision needs to continue to 9:15. Or if the school finishes at 3:15 or 3:05, whatever time it finishes, that is when the after school club needs to start. Third-party providers need to be in communication with the school because every school is listed and named as to what provision they have, and that is what we are trying to make sure we've got enough provision for all parents in those schools. And that's so the school's integral part of it, and they must endorse any applications. Any third parties or HAF providers or people looking to apply for this, we will be asking the school is, are you aware of this application? And do you endorse, and are you willing to put on your website that this is how wraparound provision is catered for in your school, and the contact details of that third party person. So the delivery models are quite simple. So either the school can do it themselves with using the school staff in the school space, or they could have a third-party provider come onto the school site and deliver it from the school. They could have a community model where maybe 2 or 3 schools get together and they work together, or a third party might collect from multiple schools and deliver in a community hall or something. Childminders, absolutely integral to this. And we know that parents' working patterns vary, and there's sometimes a childminder is more flexible in that sort of shift work. Or other early years providers, because quite often they're sort of local to schools in that community, and they can provide that sort of extra wraparound childcare, as they are often already childcare registered. So in February, the DfE did a little update, and they published their National Wraparound Childcare Programme Handbook. If you haven't seen it already, the link is on here, but do go and check it out because it explains exactly what their vision is. It also, there's always been a right to request that parents can request wraparound childcare of schools. And they've just sort of tightened up some of that guidance on what's expected of schools and how they respond to those requests. And then kind of connected very much to that is they've also updated the guidance to ensure what the LA is expected, what the local authority, what we are expected to do, and how schools and we engage together to make sure there's enough childcare places for all the parents who need this. So as I said, we've got a list of schools, and when we were sort of mapping the need, we asked what schools and local areas who's delivering it for you, either on site or off site or locally, and that gave us 3 sort of categories of need. So priority 1 group is the area where there is no provision either before or after schools, and there are parents in need. And these figures came from the parent survey that was sent out. And priority 2 is where there is some provision in the area, but not enough to cover both breakfast club and after school club. Or it could be where a school or a third party is delivering it in an area, but the need is much greater than that one provision can cater for. And that's where we might need to increase the offer locally. If you've got if there's a really big school, like 2 or 3, 4, 500 places, and there's 30 places available in one club, then that might be a lot of parents looking for additional places and the pressure on that club. And priority 3 is where we've got everybody happy. They've got breakfast and after school club are in place and working well. And we've just about released the phase 2 funding, which will be focusing on those priority 1 and priority 2 groups. We need to try and get those down. Because after phase 1 of funding, you can see the red column is what we had at the beginning. So in priority 1, we had 122 schools that had no provision at all. We've managed to get about 34 off the list. So we're down to about 88, but there's still lots of schools that we need this. And then priority 2, exactly the same. We sort of 85 who weren't doing this initially or had not enough provision. And then now we're down to about 75. And then priority 3, you can see, is going up. So these are the ones that are all happiness. And we've now got an additional 60 odd schools that are now delivering this. That's after the first phase. And we're hoping now by the second phase to get that much higher. We need to get 100% of schools catered for. SEN hasn't changed. Part of our phase 2 strategy is to engage with the SEN schools, SEN providers, and ensure that we are being fully inclusive and that we bring those schools on that journey with us. We appreciate it is more complex issues, but we are determined that, the parents of SEN children have also got the opportunity to access childcare before and after school. One of the groups that we had initially is this DNA, did not engage. That's where we sent out surveys to the parents or the schools, and they didn't respond. We had no response. So we have no idea what the need is. So we don't have enough information to put them into priority 1, 2, or 3. And we initially, I think first there was 88, and then we got down to 53. We're now down to about 40 schools that we just don't know. So we'll be in round 2, we'll be tackling them again, going, can you just, either send out your own survey or send our survey out and see if we can find out what is the need in those areas. So for all providers of wraparound childcare, we want to make really clear what that means. And I think some of the applications we saw, they weren't just really sure about what is wraparound childcare. And they were still talking about clubs and activities and those enhancements, but this is childcare. So it's really important you have a clear vision of what childcare before and after school looks like, and then how you share that information with the parents and carers. And things to consider are things like the early years foundation stage. While you don't have to deliver the curriculum, you will have to adhere to the ratios and the policies around well-being for children in there. The types and ranges of experiences and activities you provide. So, there should be a little timetable that at such a time we're going to offer, some sporting maybe, or some outdoor play. But there's also going to be a time when we offer just a place to chill out, or maybe do some arts or crafts or Legos. So like a timetable of activities that the children can participate in during their 3 hours after school. And the morning's easier. It's because there's a lot shorter time, and by the time they've had some breakfast, there's not a lot of time left. And again, food in that's really important. They're expected to get some food during their time. So breakfast should be provided, and in the evening, a light meal should be provided to keep the children going. I've said about, how we support children with special educational needs and disabilities. Again, this has to be fully inclusive. Every child should be able to access this if their parents desire it. And it's just making sure that you make those changes or adapt your provision to meet the needs of all children. And I said about food and drink already. So again, because this is childcare, here's a list of some of the policies that you might want to consider when applying for the funding or setting up your wraparound childcare offer. So it is the things that most of these are the usual school ones, but there are a few more on there that you might not consider. For example, things like the intimate care. These children might get wet, they might need changing. How are you going to deal with this? As I said, it is childcare over a longer period of time. It's not just an activity. It could be things like sun cream. Who's going to apply the sun cream if it's really, really hot and sunny out? Just little things. As I said, because it's slightly longer and it's it's fully inclusive childcare. And I'm going to keep saying the word childcare because I think we have to get away from the idea of a program of activities. It is lots of it's a fully safe, secure place that children can be and are happy. So staffing, we know staffing is always an issue, but it's really important to consider how many staff you will need, and it will depend on the age of the children, what your staffing ratios should be. Again, there's clear guidelines in the Ofsted guidance, and the guidance the DfE published also puts in there about staffing and staffing levels. It's quite handy to have a booking system, so as people book on, you'll understand what the age of the children are, and then you can meet or adapt staff ratios to meet that. All staff must have appropriate training and qualifications to understand their roles and responsibilities, and a sound understanding of those policies and procedures for that setting. There is if you refer to the Ofsted register, it will outline what qualifications and training is required. If you've got early years children, so the reception class, there's particular training that they will need to make sure. So, for example, if you're on the voluntary childcare register, which would include the early years, you need at least one person to have a level 2 in a related subject. In this case, early years. Staff absence is always a concern. So having a contingency plan will be needed. So having flexi staff available on hand who can come in if other staff are sick. Also utilising the external staff, so in other venues locally, or the school staff if they're happy to support. But as I said, parents will be going back to work. Parents will be employed and elsewhere. So you have to ensure that your staffing plan has got a contingency in there, so the parents don't have to come back because there isn't enough staff. Fun, engaging, and a place children want to be. And this is from the DfE handbook, and it says, while the availability of places in primary school objective of the programme is to ensure safe and engaging and all-inclusive high-quality childcare, settings should inspire confidence in families by ensuring children's time in wraparound is fun, engaging, and something they want to do. It should be a really fun experience for the children. Over to Caroline for the funding.
So why the funding is available? It's it's intended to enable providers to create this provision. So we need this provision set up, and again, set up between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. We know it may take some time to build parents' confidence. Parents need to know this is reliable. It's not an art club or a session whereby if the teacher's not there, this will be closed for that day. It's a reliable provision that's always open. And this is going to take some time because some parents have had provision before, which is then closed down due to it not being sustainable. So again, it's to build parents' confidence, to know that, to rely on it and depend on it. The revenue funding aims to remove those financial barriers to set it up. So what we need to do is make sure the staff are in place, the staff have the right training, you can provide the right snacks, the right food, and just make sure that that's all in place and it's not going to financially impact the provision that's setting it up. Thanks, Susie. So some of the conditions of funding, you are expected to speak to the school or the schools that you want to provide the provision for. We need the schools to be on board, engaged with you, so they know that you can provide this childcare from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. You will need to complete the online application. You'll also need to provide a business plan and cash flow. We are here to support you with that if it's something you haven't done before. If it's something you have done before, please feel free to state that in your application, to show us, work with us. We're more than happy to help. The other thing that we do ask for is that all parents have the opportunity to access the universal credit or tax-free childcare. So the universal credit, the parents will access that themselves, but they need to know that you accept that for payment. And the tax-free childcare, that's something that you need to set up for your setting. You will there is a process to follow that is at the end of this presentation. And again, if you need support with that, we're here to help. You also need to agree, and this is really important, to all the terms set out in the service specification. The service specification will be online with the application. Please look at it. That tells you about the hours that we need this provision provided. It tells you, all the other stipulations that are involved. And if you can't get Ofsted registered, you can't do a list of things, then please don't apply for the funding. The funding is available, it is there, but if you can't do those things, then your application wouldn't be accepted. Thanks, Susie. So again, just to talk about the Ofsted registration, that must be in place. The children that you would need to look after are from reception to up to year 6. There are a list of minimum requirements. These can be found on page 14. It's quite a long list. Please have a read through them. Hopefully that will help to look at some of those things that you need in place. And again, just to reiterate the service specification, please read it, please look at it, and please basically agree and nod at every one of those points. Thanks, Susie. So how much money is available? So it's really important to note that you can apply for up to £10,000 for the first application. Now, you will be asked for a breakdown of where you anticipate that funding to be allocated, to staff, to resources and equipment, any rental of premises. So you might have to rent the school hall or your hall, any training and recruitment costs associated with getting the right staff in place, and any other funding. So after the initial £10,000, again, we will ask for the evidence, and we will monitor this. After the first term, you'll be asked to complete a monitoring form. Any subsequent termly funding, we will only cover the shortfall between any income that you start to generate from your occupancy and a business break-even point. Once you hit a point of break-even, where your income matches your expenditure, any funding will cease at that point. We won't fund anything that then moves into profit. So the cost of the childcare, again, really important, must be paid for by parents. This is not free. There is no ongoing funding. There's the start-up funding, and then that is it. Thanks, Susie. So we are looking to see a sustainable business model. If you are applying for funding, you need to show that as part of your evidence in your cash flow. What we really want to see is the build-up of numbers in your setting, the build-up of income, and your expenses. Be very clear and be very transparent about all of your expenses. And we want to see at what point you think you'll break even and at what point you'll be in profit. And please be realistic on the numbers of children. You know, if you're starting this in January, parents might not have known there was a wraparound service available, as Susie was talking about earlier. So again, building that confidence in the parents to know and understand that you're there. But we do want to see that eventually this is sustainable business. If it's not, and you know, into the second year, you're still not sustainable, then it would mean that we are looking to do something different in that area. We need to see sustainable business models. And like I've said, there's no ongoing funding. It's not something you can apply for in the second year, the third year, the fourth year. There's no ongoing funding to be given for this. Again, parents are expected to pay for it. We would look at, I mean, you know your business models better than me, but you could look at applying an hourly funding rate or a daily funding rate, depending how you want to operate. And just again, to reiterate, there's no government funding to subsidise the places. Thanks, Susie. So get ready for the application process. You need a business plan and 3 years cash flow forecast. Like we've already said, Ofsted registration will be required. So just understand what that would involve. Go online. I'm sure we've got links to that later on in the presentation. So please go and have a look and start that process. You will also need to know about what else you need in place: health and safety, disability discrimination. I think Susie's touched on a number of the other policies and things that you will need. Register for tax-free childcare. Think about staffing qualifications and think about your staff. If you need to employ any staff, you can use our Essex School Jobs website, which is currently free. This is as of June 2024. You can currently advertise free on there. And think about the delivery model that best suits you. It could be a mixed model, but in order to make it sustainable, you might need to incorporate a number of those elements Susie talked about earlier.
Caroline, I've just spotted a mistake on here. So where it says planning requirements, that isn't necessary. So just don't ignore those last two words.
Okay, these are more just really reference documents. So tax-free childcare. So this could result in a 20% saving to parents. So parents are keen to use this if they're eligible for it. And again, you need to sign up. The information about you need one person to manage this, and the link is on the bottom of this slide. And I think, again, these are the minimum requirements for delivery. I'm not going to read through them. Please do reference them and have a look at them yourselves. Thanks, Susie. There's a few pages of that, I think. Do you want to talk around the early years register, or is it?
Yeah, just to say that there's two types of childcare register. You've got if I go back one, so you've got the early years register or the childcare register. If you are taking, which we expect children from reception class, so from 4, you need to be on the early years register. You can also be on the childcare register, but you do need to be on the early years register to take those young children. And then the childcare register is broken up into 2 parts. You've got the compulsory register, which is children aged from 5 to 8, and the voluntary register is those children aged over the age of 8. It sounds complicated, but it is just one application to Ofsted, and you would just tick all those boxes. Okay. Won't read through the rest of it, but it's just understanding that if you're doing wraparound for all school age children from 4 to 11, you would need to be on all of those, registered for all of those different age groups. So again, here on the end of the presentation, there's some useful links, some guidance that you can just click through. And if you've got any questions, we are here to help. We want to get, we want to get all the schools off our list. So anything that we can do, any queries, any questions, that is what we're here for. So do email wraparound.childcare@essex.gov. And that is it. Thank you very much for listening. And we're here if you need us. Good luck.
Thank you.